Hi everyone, the Mature Simmer here. So I'm super excited. One of the greatest mods that I've been waiting for, Guidance Steering, or GPS by Wobster, is back in FS22. Aside from just letting you know that, if you haven't seen it, I also wanted to take the opportunity to put together a tutorial on how to operate it for those who may be new to the game and may not understand how it works or what it's for. So the first thing is you need to get it on your vehicle, and you can do that when you're buying a new vehicle, or in this case, with the tractor I have here, I've driven over to the shop, and you can go ahead and make the change here and customize. And then under GPS, you'll select yes. I've already done that in this case, so it's showing $0. But GPS costs $15,000 to add to any vehicle. So it isn't inexpensive, but it's worth every penny, in my opinion. It is one of the game changers in playing Farming Simulator. So if you've been using the game since it came out for the last few weeks, and this has been your first experience in Farming Simulator, you may be at the point where you're thinking, this is really difficult to just keep driving and trying to stay on track and so forth. So I'm going to get back to my farm and I'll explain how everything works. Okay, so I'm back here on my farm. So how does this guidance steering thing work? So you'll notice over by the speedometer, above your gear shift indicator, you've got three new icons: a steering wheel with a line through it, what is a satellite, and then these weird three lines with an arrow with a number over them. That tells you that this vehicle has GPS installed on it. The way you get to the GPS menu is you turn it on, and on a computer keyboard that defaults to Alt-C. So you'll see when I do that, I now have two indicators turned on, which is telling me that I have GPS on. You can get to the control menu by hitting Control-S, and that gets you to the settings. So this looks a little busy. This can get a little intimidating if you're new to this, but there's really only certain things that you need to worry about. And there are keyboard shortcuts for most of these that you can learn over time by pulling up your help menu, and I'll explain some of the key ones that I use before I end this video lesson. The system will determine automatically, and it's usually quite good at this, sometimes it will be off, what the working width of your implement is. So you have to be attached to it. So in this case, I'm attached to my seeder, and if you hit auto width, it will then adjust, and so you can see it's 19.68 feet. You can then also do an offset. What basically that does is it will move the equipment over a certain period from the center line to offset the work. Typically, you might want to use this with plows that rotate. I don't use it a lot. I find it simply easier to just remove the offset. And so you may have noticed you can increase it here, but you can just click that and zero it out. These buttons work the same way. If you click that button, it'll zero out the width, but you can then just go back into auto width and get that going. Now that this is running, I'm going to pull up my help menu so you can see some of the options it gives you. So at this point, what you need to do is basically set a line up for your system to use, for GPS to use. So basically that it'll talk to the satellites and keep things lined up. So you just have to figure out which way you're going to go down the fields. I'm going to seed this field this way, and as you can see, I'm off from the edge a little bit. I'm doing that intentionally. So you could go back into your menu using Control-S, and you could select the strategy, and in this case it appears that they are not allowing us to do anything but A-B straight, and then you've got either A and a heading, which basically means you will select a point and then you will give it a compass direction from 0 to 360 degrees, or you will do A and B. And I typically use A and B, so you'll set A, and then you have to move at least 15 meters, and then you set B. You can also do that using Alt-E. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here, and you'll see an A has showed up on my screen. I'm going to rotate it and put the A on the wheel so that it's a little easier to see. And at this point, you just drive forward about what you think is going to be 15 meters, and you hit Alt-E again. And at this point, you've now snapped the line that the GPS is going to follow. Now, how do you see what it did? Once again, if I go back into the menu, one of the options here is I can show lines. So if you turn that on and then hit escape, now you can see the lines. So those edge blue or purple lines are the edge of your implement, and the center white line is the center line of your GPS tracking. You can also turn lines on and off by hitting Alt-L, which is what I'm doing here. If you enable guidance steering, you can do that from the menu by turning it on and off. Or the way to do that is you can hit Alt-X on the keyboard, and you'll see that that center line now has turned green. So that means that if I go forward now, I don't need to do any kind of steering, and I'm actually going to turn it off, and I'm going to move over a bit so you can see how GPS functions. Now if I turn this on, you'll see the wheels have turned. I'm not touching my steering. I'm just pressing my throttle, and it lines up and then keeps a straight line. Just that capability in and of itself is a game changer for how you play Farming Simulator, because you now don't have to worry about driving perfectly straight. Let GPS handle that. So now, let's say I want to begin working on this field. Well, my track is off. So I can move that, and the way I do that is I use Alt page down and Alt page up. So you figure out which one's moving the way you need it, and you basically line up the line with the edge of your field, and then you can hit Alt-X and lock yourself in. The other thing you can do is, let's say I don't want to start at this edge of the field, I want to start down here. And you kind of give yourself a shot of lining up, and you say, well, I'm off a little bit. There's another keyboard shortcut. If you hit Alt-Home and then move a bit, it'll snap to where your tractor currently is, or where your implement is. So once again, if I want to adjust this way, I can do it, hit Alt-Home again, and now I've kind of done it manually that way. So you can use either Alt page down and Alt page up to move things and let them move back and forth, or you can go ahead and use Alt-Home. So what you just saw with the lines flipping around is the last piece that I'm going to share with you, and that is you can basically move the lines 90 degrees. You do that with Alt-End, and it will just cycle around. So that this is good if you suddenly want to change from going across a field to going 90 degrees and going up and down a field. So let's say I had a much larger field here, and I wanted to do a headland. So I want GPS to keep me straight on the headland, but once I'm done with my headland passes, I then simply want to start going 90 degrees away from those up and down. I don't have to reset my GPS line and do the Alt-E and so forth. I just hit Alt-End and snap that line over 90 degrees, and that will let things work. So if I go ahead now, turn on my seeder, lower it down, turn on Alt-X, and I can just hit cruise control, and you can change your line as you drive. So I'm hitting Alt page up and page down because I felt I was a little bit off. And now I'm planting. You can see my leaders are going down, and I'm planting my field, but I don't have to steer. And so the nice thing is I'm also as efficient as possible, because GPS basically makes sure that the line has no space between it. That's what the offset is at this point, where we're not overlapping in any way. So now that I'm at the end of the row, I can do one of two things. I can manually unlock myself from the line by hitting Alt-X, or you can just steer away, and you heard that beep, it just snaps off the line at that point. And then you just turn yourself and line up in the next pass. Now, the last piece I want to talk about is those three lines with the arrow with the number. You can now see it says a -2. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this at this point and run this line. And what that is telling you is from the point where you started, where you set your line, which in this case was the edge of the field, I am now two rows from the negative. And negative and positive really don't matter. They're just offsets from that position. So I hit Alt-X to stop. But I am 2 rows off. I'm picking up my seeder. I just don't want to seed that field by accident. So you'll see as I go back, it's -1, and now it's 0. So the main line is 0. It's not 1. But then if I want to go back here, now I can lock my line and let the tractor steer, and it will do all the aligning for me. And I can simply, get close and then move forward. And then it takes care of everything. And so I can very, very efficiently get through the field. And more importantly, I'm not fighting the jiggle of the tractor. Now, if you go inside, this seems to be pretty stable, but you can see the wheel moved a little bit there. It moved a little bit there, so it is steering your vehicle ever so slightly, the same thing that you have to do manually. But the great thing is GPS lets you make that decision of, do I want to go ahead and manually steer my field, or do I want some assistance? And once again, given that in modern farming a lot of equipment has GPS in it, some people may view it as cheating, but it really isn't, and it truly, for me at least, makes the game significantly more enjoyable and playable, because I'm not wasting time because I've suddenly gone offline as I've gone down this field, and I have a tiny little bit of a gap that I didn't seed, and then I have to turn around and come back, and I'm wasting all kinds of time instead of just effectively farming. So the last piece I'm going to go ahead and show, I'm going to hit Control-S to go back into the menu here, is where I can go ahead and now work with the tracks. So I can call this track sowing and save the track to the farm. So this explains, the track is scoped to the farm of the vehicle. By default, it's accessible for everyone. So in a multiplayer situation, everyone could see sowing, and I don't remember this field number, but let's say it's 45. And then that is now saved. If I hit the plus sign there, so you can see now in this list, it will show me things that I have. If I wanted to, say, go ahead and now hit Alt-End and change this, I can go back in, and I can say sowing 45 north-south and save it. And now I have both of those tracks. And then I can load either of those tracks with this button, and I can delete tracks here. This button lets you do what the Alt-End key does, where it rotates your line. So there you go. So you can see it's, instead of pointing down north-south, it's now behind me. But again, you can just do Alt-End and get that same feature. So that should give you the key things you need to know to be effective with GPS or guidance steering. I highly suggest you get this mod, add it to your games, and give it a try. And I think you'll likely agree that your gameplay experience will be changed forever. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please click the like button. Subscribe for more videos so that you know when I release more content, and I will talk to you next time.